over the chaos of traffic and chatter, weaving through the dusty air like a forgotten melody. Most people walked past without looking, yet those who paused felt something stir deep within them. What makes a voice powerful? Is it the perfection of notes, or the pain behind them? Raphael had never known comfort. His world was a mosaic of cracked pavements, second-hand dreams, and his grandmother's fading smile. Each coin that fell into his tin can meant a little more rice for dinner, a little less hunger that night. But when he sang, he was not poor. In those fleeting moments, he belonged to something bigger than the streets, something divine. Yet fate, cruel and kind in equal measure, had other plans for the boy with the golden voice. One afternoon, a tourist uploaded a short clip of him singing Hotel California. Within days, the internet caught fire. Millions watched. Thousands shared. And somewhere in London, a man known for breaking stars and hearts alike, Simon Cowell, paused mid-scroll. Could a barefoot boy from the streets of Manila truly shake the world? The question lingered like an unfinished note. Somewhere, destiny was tuning its strings, preparing for a performance that would not just change a life, but remind the world that beauty can rise from the dust. As the sun set over the slums, Raphael closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer, not for fame, not for fortune, but for one chance. Just one stage where his voice could finally be heard. The world was about to listen. Raphael had always been a quiet soul, one of those children who carried entire worlds behind their eyes. Born in the heart of Manila's slums, he learned early that life doesn't hand you melodies, you have to find them in the noise. His days began before sunrise, when the air still smelled of last night's rain and the sound of jeepneys rattled through narrow alleys. He would sling his old, chipped guitar over his shoulder, a gift from a church volunteer years ago, and walk barefoot to the plaza. There, between vendors and beggars, he sang. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried something that made people turn their heads. It was raw, aching, and honest, like the streets themselves were singing through him. Every coin he earned was counted carefully, saved in a small jar hidden under a loose wooden plank in their hut. Some days, the jar filled enough for rice and a few vegetables. Other days, it stayed nearly empty, and he and his grandmother, Lola Maria, went to sleep on empty stomachs. Still, Lola never complained. She would stroke Raphael's hair and tell him that God hides his brightest stars in the darkest skies. Raphael believed her. That faith was what kept him singing even when the crowd ignored him, even when hunger made his voice tremble. He had simple habits that comforted him, strumming his guitar before dawn, sketching music notes in the dirt with a stick, watching the city lights blink like distant dreams. He would often sit on the roof of their tiny shack, imagining what it would be like to stand under real lights, the kind that shine on stages, not on billboards. Despite everything, Raphael never lost his softness. He smiled easily, even at strangers. He helped other street kids fix their makeshift instruments. But behind that gentle nature was a longing that grew stronger every day, a quiet yearning to be seen, to be heard, and to prove that even a boy born in silence could fill the world with song. The rainy season came early that year, washing through the streets of Manila like a sad song. The narrow alleyways where Raphael sang turned into small rivers, and the plaza, his tiny stage, was drowned beneath gray water. With his guitar tucked inside a torn plastic bag, he watched helplessly as days passed without music, without coins, without food. But the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm growing inside him. Lola Maria had fallen ill. Her cough, once soft and harmless, now echoed through the night like a cruel reminder of their struggle. Medicines were expensive, even warm soup became a luxury. Raphael sat beside her one evening, his eyes tracing the cracks on the wall as she slept. He felt a heaviness he couldn't name, the feeling of watching the only person who ever believed in him slowly fade. He tried to keep singing in the rain, standing under awnings or abandoned stalls, but the city seemed too busy to listen. The same streets that once gave him comfort now felt cold and empty. Every time his guitar string snapped, it felt like a piece of his hope breaking too. In those silent nights, Raphael questioned everything. Why was life so unfair? Why did people like him, kind, poor, and forgotten, have to fight so hard just to be heard? He missed the days when his grandmother's humming filled their small home. Now, the silence was unbearable. One night, after another failed day of singing, Raphael returned to find Lola unconscious. Panic ripped through him. He ran to neighbors, begged for help, but all he could do was hold her frail hand and whisper her favorite lullaby through tears. That night, she took her last breath, and with her, she carried away the only warmth Raphael had ever known. The next morning, Manila was quiet. The boy with the golden voice sat on the curb, his guitar beside him, and for the first time, he didn't sing. He had lost his reason to. Raphael's journey from the slums of Manila to the glittering lights of Los Angeles felt unreal, like living inside a dream too fragile to touch. The airplane windows reflected his wide, nervous eyes. He had never been so far from home, nor so close to everything he had ever wished for. Yet beneath the excitement, fear coiled deep within him. He missed his grandmother terribly. Every sound, the hum of engines, the chatter of strangers, reminded him of her gentle voice. She would have told him to be brave, to stand tall. But now, he had to carry her words in his heart. Alone. The first days were overwhelming. The rehearsals, the cameras, the endless instructions, it all blurred together. Surrounded by talented singers with polished clothes and confident smiles, Raphael felt small again, like the street boy no one noticed. He questioned himself 100 times. What if I'm not good enough? What if they laugh? But each time doubt crept in, he remembered his grandmother's hands, rough, warm, guiding his fingers along the guitar strings. She had taught him that music wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. So Raphael began to practice with that thought in mind, pouring every ounce of his pain, love, and faith into his song. Nights were the hardest. The loneliness returned, whispering that he didn't belong here. He would sit by the hotel window, looking at the city lights, so bright, so far from home, and whisper a quiet promise to Lola Maria, "I'll make you proud." The day before his audition, he visited a nearby park. He sat under a tree, clutching his guitar, and played softly to the wind. People stopped and listened. Some smiled, some cried. And in that moment, Raphael understood something profound: his music was never meant to make him rich or famous. It was meant to heal, to remind others that pain could still sound beautiful. He wasn't just a street boy anymore. He was a voice born from struggle, and now, he was ready to let the world hear it. The lights dimmed. The crowd quieted. 1,000 eyes watched as Raphael stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, clutching his worn-out guitar, the same one he had carried through the streets of Manila. The massive hall, the cameras, the judges, everything felt unreal. His heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. He looked small beneath the bright lights, a barefoot boy standing in a world of glitter and fame. Yet when he took a breath, the memory of Lola Maria's voice filled him with calm. He could almost hear her whisper, "Sing from your heart, Anik." Then, he began. The first notes of Hotel California echoed through the hall, soft and haunting. His voice trembled at first, but soon it soared, pure, raw, and filled with every tear he had ever shed. The room fell silent. Even Simon Cowell, known for his cold composure, leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the boy. As the song reached its chorus, Raphael's voice broke slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. Images flashed through his mind, his grandmother's gentle smile, the rain-soaked streets, the nights of hunger and hope. Each note carried those memories, transforming pain into something beautiful. When the final chord faded, there was silence, a heavy, sacred kind of silence. Then, suddenly, the hall erupted. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. One of the judges pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti burst from above, falling like blessings around him. Raphael stood frozen, tears streaming down his cheeks. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. He wasn't just a street boy. He was an artist, a miracle, a story that the world would never forget. Simon Cowell rose slowly, his expression softening. For a brief moment, the man who had seen thousands of performers seemed speechless. He simply nodded, a quiet gesture of respect, as if to say, "You've done it, kid." As the golden lights shimmered above, Raphael looked up, beyond the cameras, beyond the noise, and whispered a silent thank you to the sky. He knew Lola Maria was watching. When the stage lights dimmed and the cheers faded, Raphael stood backstage in quiet disbelief. The confetti still clung to his hair, his hands trembled, and his heart felt light, lighter than it had in years. In that silence, he realized something profound. It wasn't the stage, the applause, or even the golden buzzer that made this moment special. It was the journey that brought him here, the hunger, the loss, the faith, and the music that refused to die. The boy who once sang for coins on a broken street corner had now sung for millions. But deep inside, he was still the same Raphael, the boy who believed that music could make pain meaningful. He didn't need riches or fame. All he ever wanted was for someone to listen, and now, the whole world had heard him. In the days that followed, messages poured in from across the globe. People wrote to him, saying his song had reminded them of their own struggles, of lost parents, forgotten dreams, and the courage to keep going. Raphael smiled through tears, realizing that his voice had become more than sound, it had become a bridge between hearts. Every night, before sleeping, he looked out the window of his small apartment in Los Angeles and whispered the same words, "Thank you, Lola." Her love had carried him through the darkest nights, teaching him that even broken strings can still play the sweetest songs. His story became a reminder to millions, that greatness isn't born from comfort, it's born from pain, perseverance, and faith. That even when life steals everything away, it can never silence the music within. Somewhere, in the streets of Manila, another child might be singing tonight, barefoot, hungry, but hopeful. And maybe, just maybe, Raphael's voice will reach them through the noise, whispering softly. Don't stop singing. Someone, somewhere, will listen. And that is how a boy with nothing left to lose found everything he had ever been searching for, not in fame, but in the hearts he touched. What if one song could remind the world what music truly means? What if a single trembling voice, from a boy no one knew, could awaken forgotten emotions, lost somewhere between fame and noise? That was the day when silence fell on one of the loudest stages in the world. The lights of America's Got Talent gleamed like 1,000 dreams, but none shone brighter than the soul of a young Filipino boy standing in their reflection. His name was Elvis Santiago, a 17-year-old from the small coastal town of Batangas. Barefoot on a dirt road, his voice once echoed through narrow streets where music was more survival than art. Eli had grown up with the sound of the sea, waves crashing against hunger, wind whispering through empty nights. His father, Ramon Santiago, a fisherman who once played an old guitar under the stars, taught him that music wasn't about fame. It was about feeling, about healing hearts that the world had forgotten. But when a storm took his father away, Eli's song went silent too. For years, he sang only to the ocean, to the memory of a man who believed in him. Until one night, a local talent scout recorded Eli singing Anak by Freddie Aguilar under a flickering lamppost. That video reached millions. And suddenly, the boy from Batangas was invited to sing before the world. Now, on the AGT stage, Eli stood trembling. The microphone felt heavier than his dreams. Cameras pointed, judges watched, and behind their polished smiles, the world waited to see if this boy could truly move them. Could a boy from a small village in the Philippines revive the soul of music itself? Could one song, sung with pain, love, and memory, make the world remember what it had forgotten? That day, the answer would echo through every heart that still believed in the power of a simple, honest voice. Eli Santiago was not born into comfort. His world began in a weathered bamboo house by the shore, where the salty wind crept through every crack and the night smelled of seaweed and survival. The sound of waves was his lullaby, and the creaking of his father's wooden boat was the rhythm of his childhood. He was a quiet boy, shy, observant, and full of unspoken emotions. People in his village often said Ely had a heart too soft for this hard world. He didn't talk much, but when he sang, it was as if the sea itself had found a voice. His melodies carried a calm ache, a kind of beauty that came only from pain. After his father's death, Ely's life became a series of long days and longer silences. He helped his mother sell dried fish in the market, carrying baskets heavier than his own body. School became distant, dreams became fragile. Yet every night, when everyone slept, he would sit by the ocean with his father's cracked guitar, the same one missing 2 strings, and hum softly to the stars. Music was his only friend, his escape, his memory. He didn't sing for fame, he sang to remember. He sang to feel less alone. Sometimes, stray dogs would sit beside him, as if they understood every note of his sorrow. Ely had small habits that revealed his gentle soul. He always collected seashells after storms, not because they were beautiful, but because they had survived something fierce. He believed people were like that too. Fragile, yet strong enough to keep their shape after being tossed by life's waves. Inside him lived a quiet storm, fear, hope, grief, and love all tangled together. He dreamed of standing on a real stage one day, not to impress anyone, but to prove that even a fisherman's son could make the world listen. Still, beneath those dreams hid a haunting doubt: was his voice really enough? Or would the world see just another poor boy trying to sing? That question lingered in Ely's heart, until fate placed a microphone in his trembling hands. Ely's life had always been a quiet battle, not with people, but with the silence inside him. After his father's death, that silence became heavier, almost unbearable. Music, once his comfort, began to feel like a wound he kept reopening every night. Each song reminded him of what he had lost: a father's laughter, a home filled with guitar strings and stories, a future that once felt certain. He tried to stay strong for his mother, Luz Santiago, a woman with hands hardened by years of labor and a heart worn thin by grief. She smiled for Ely, but her eyes always seemed to search for someone who wasn't coming back. Ely sang for her sometimes, hoping his voice could hide the hunger and sadness in their home. But deep down, he felt like his songs were whispers against the wind, small, fragile, easily forgotten. There were days when Ely wanted to stop singing altogether. The world felt too big, too cruel for a boy from Batangas. When he watched television, the artists on screen looked like they belonged to another universe, bright, perfect, untouchable. What could his cracked voice do in a world full of polished stars? Still, something inside him refused to die. His father's words, remembered through years of pain, echoed in his mind: sing not to be heard, but to heal. But how could he heal when he himself was still broken? Then came the moment that changed everything, the stormy night when he sang by the lamppost outside the marketplace. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. His voice trembled, his eyes glistened with unspoken pain. He didn't know someone was recording him from across the street. That video, a simple boy singing his heart out in the rain, would soon spread across millions of screens, touching hearts far beyond his small town. But before the fame, before the stage lights and applause, there was only Ely, a lonely boy standing under the rain, singing not for the world, but for a father who was listening somewhere beyond the waves. That night, his pain became his purpose. Ely never expected that a single night beneath a flickering lamppost would change the course of his life. The morning after that rain-soaked performance, his small town was buzzing with whispers. Someone had uploaded his video, a grainy clip of a barefoot boy singing Anak with raw, trembling emotion. Within days, it spread like wildfire across social media. The world wasn't just hearing his voice, it was feeling it. From Manila to Los Angeles, people called him the soul of the Philippines. Journalists wrote about him, musicians praised him, and strangers cried watching him sing. But Ely didn't understand what was happening. He still woke up before dawn, helped his mother at the market, and came home to the same old cracked guitar. Yet somewhere in the noise of the internet, a message arrived, one that would shift his life forever. It was from the producers of America's Got Talent. They had seen his video. They wanted him to come. Ely couldn't believe it. The AGT stage, the place he'd only seen through old TV screens, was calling for him. But behind the excitement, fear crept in like a shadow. How could a boy who'd never left Batangas fly to America and sing before the world's toughest judges? He didn't even own proper clothes, let alone the confidence to stand on such a grand stage. When he told his mother, tears filled her eyes. She sold her gold earrings, the last keepsake of Ely's father, just to buy him a ticket. "Your father's dream lives in your voice," she whispered as she placed the small envelope in his trembling hands. On the flight to America, Ely watched the clouds drift below him and realized something he had never felt before: this wasn't just about singing anymore. This was about carrying his father's promise, his mother's sacrifice, and the heartbeat of an entire nation that believed in him. The boy who once sang to the sea was now about to sing to the world. And for the first time in years, his fear began to sound a little like hope. The days leading to his AGT audition were a storm inside Ely's heart. The bright lights of Los Angeles felt nothing like the soft glow of his village sunrise. Everything was louder, faster, and heavier. He felt invisible among towering buildings and confident faces. The other contestants spoke fluent English, carried designer clothes, and practiced with vocal coaches. Ely had none of that, just a worn guitar, a borrowed jacket, and a heart full of trembling faith. Backstage, the pressure grew unbearable. He could hear the roaring applause for other performers, the sound of dreams being made or broken within minutes. His hands shook. His voice felt trapped behind fear. For a moment, he wanted to run, to go back to the simple life where no one expected miracles from him. But then he remembered his mother's eyes, tired, but shining with pride, and his father's old words echoing through memory: "Sing not to impress, but to heal." That night, Ely closed his eyes and let those words steady his heart. He began to understand something profound: that music wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. His pain, his losses, his humble beginnings, they were not weaknesses. They were his strength. So he practiced alone in his small hotel room, over and over, not for applause but for peace. Each note became a confession, each breath a promise that he wouldn't give up now. He learned to let go of fear, to surrender to the song, to let his voice carry the weight of every storm he had survived. The more he sang, the more his tears became strength. The boy who once doubted himself was learning to believe, not in fame, but in purpose. By the time his name was called, Ely no longer felt like that trembling boy from Batangas. He felt like a vessel, of his father's dreams, his mother's prayers, and every struggling soul who had ever been told they weren't enough. He stepped onto that stage not as a contestant, but as a storyteller. And though the world didn't know it yet, a legend was about to be born. The stage lights dimmed. The audience fell into a breathless silence as Ely stepped forward, clutching his old guitar like a piece of his soul. In that vast room filled with cameras and strangers, he closed his eyes, and for a moment, it was just him and the sea again. The memory of his father's gentle humming drifted through his mind, guiding his trembling fingers across the strings. The first note echoed softly, pure and fragile, like a whisper carried by the wind. Then came the words, not polished, not perfect, but real. Each line of Anik trembled with the pain of loss and the beauty of love remembered. His voice cracked once, then rose higher, filling the air with something no microphone could capture: truth. The audience leaned in, hearts quiet, tears forming before they even knew why. Simon Cowell, known for his sharp composure, looked up, eyes softening as if he too remembered something long buried. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was a prayer. A call to every soul that had ever loved, lost, or hoped. When Ely finished, silence lingered, the kind of silence that holds reverence. And then, suddenly, the entire hall stood. The applause was thunderous, waves of emotion crashing one after another. Even the judges rose, their faces glistening with tears. The camera zoomed in on Simon, who whispered words the world would replay 1,000 times. He just revived the soul of music. Ely's knees gave out as he bowed, overwhelmed. In that instant, he wasn't thinking of fame or fortune. He was thinking of his father's guitar, his mother's tears, and the boy who once sang to an empty shore. Backstage, he received a video call from his mother, her voice shaking with pride. Behind her, the neighbors gathered, cheering through an old TV screen. And though miles apart, Ely felt his father's presence in the warmth of that moment. For the first time, the boy who once sang to heal his pain had healed the world instead. And as the golden confetti fell around him, Ely realized, he hadn't just sung a song. He had found himself. When the lights faded and the cheers softened into echoes, Ely stood alone for a moment, eyes lifted toward the ceiling of the grand theater. Somewhere deep within that silence, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. The boy who once sang to the sea had sung to the world, and the world had finally listened. But more than fame, what he carried home was something greater, belonging. In the days that followed, news outlets called him the new legend of the Philippines. Millions watched his performance on repeat. Yet Ely didn't see himself as a star. He still preferred quiet mornings, the smell of salt in the air, and the touch of his father's old guitar. Fame could fade, he knew that, but the feeling of being heard, truly heard, would stay forever. He realized that greatness doesn't come from where you are born, but from what you carry in your heart. Music had always been his bridge, between pain and healing, between the lost and the found. And now, that same voice that once trembled with fear had become a beacon for others who dared to dream beyond their scars. Ely returned to his village, not with riches, but with hope. He visited the same shore where his father used to sing. This time, when he strummed the guitar, it was not out of sorrow but gratitude. The waves moved gently, as if clapping for him. He understood, at last, what his father meant: sing not to be heard, but to heal. Because healing begins when you stop running from your pain and start transforming it into something beautiful. Ely's story became more than an audition. It became a reminder that even in the smallest corners of the world, a single voice can awaken something the world has forgotten: the soul of music, the truth of emotion, and the courage to believe again. And as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, his song lingered in the wind, soft, timeless, and alive, a promise that no dream is too small, and no heart too broken, to be heard by the world.